We're going to talk all things reporting with two of the very best. To my immediate right, in the middle, up here on stage, is Dan Shaughnessy. He's a sports columnist and associate editor at the Boston Globe, where he has spent 47 years over two stints. Native of Groton, Massachusetts, Dan graduated from Holy Cross in 1975, worked part-time at the Globe from 73 to 77, and rejoined the Globe full-time in 1981. He's been a sports columnist there since 1989. 13-time published author, Dan is a 14-time Massachusetts Sportswriter of the Year, and tonight will be inducted into the NSMA Hall of Fame. On the far right side of the stage, from my perspective, is the multi Ken Rosenthal, the 2024 NSMA National Sportswriter of the Year, also well known for his work as the dugout reporter on Fox Sports' Major League Baseball coverage. He's a senior baseball writer for The Athletic, a University of Pennsylvania graduate who spent 12 years as a baseball insider for MLB Network and also worked for the Baltimore Sun from 1987 to 2000. He was voted NSMA's Maryland Sportswriter of the Year 5 times and also previously was the NSMA National Sportswriter of the Year in 2022. Ken, I want to open it up starting with you. This panel is about reporting. What is the value of great reporting?
Well, the value of great reporting is simply telling people something they don't know. And I remember when I started the Sporting News, and it was like the year 2000, there was a big sign in the newsroom that said, tell us something or tell me something I don't know. And good reporting leads to all kinds of things, leads to great storytelling, leads to important breaks on news. It's the heart and the foundation of everything we do. Now, Dan's a columnist now, but he's still a great reporter, and he's always been that way. So I don't even know how you can put a value on it or anything like that. It's just the foundation of journalism.
Dan, some question for you.
Well, it's we have so many young people here today, and when I get approached by young people, I'm so old, what can you tell them now? I don't know. Geez, I can't operate any of the stuff you can operate. So, but what I do tell them is get out of the dorm, get out of the house, get out of the apartment, go report. Tell me something I don't already know. Don't piggyback off everybody else's reporting. Do your own reporting. So if you want to get a job at the Boston Globe, it's okay. Just tell me about Bentley basketball or Fordham baseball, just whatever's around you, go out and report it. And it's not in the dorm room, it's not in the apartment, it's not with your friends. It's go talk to primary sources, something, and tell us about that. Show us that you can do that. Because when you get to whatever level you're going to get to, that's what we're going to rely on you for. And all the talk radio, or whatever for a better word, different levels, but there's a lot of people behind microphones doing sports talk radio who've never reported. It drives me crazy, and they get their content on the backs of people who report and do some mocking of this in the process, and also liberating to rip the athletes and rip everybody else, but they've never left the studio, and they really can't tell me anything that I don't already know. We all have opinions. That's what talk radio is for. Anyway, report. Get out of the apartment.
Yeah, along the same lines. Once in a while, a young person will come up to me or one of their parents, and the parent will say, my son or daughter, he or she, they read a great blog. And I'm like, okay. But like Dan said, everybody can do that. Reporting is a unique skill all its own. And it comes from building relationships with people, as Dan said, talking with people, and always being curious. That's the key to it.
How'd you learn to report, Ken?
You just learn over the years. And I'll just give you my baseball example because I started at small newspapers and worked my way up. But I was a columnist at the Baltimore Sun. And at that point, I was still doing a lot of baseball because Baltimore had just gotten football. This was 1996, a little after that. And the reason I could go to the Sporting News as a national baseball writer was because the Orioles had fired all these people who were all over baseball that I knew. And That was my network. So you have to have, at some point, the ability to build relationships with people who will maybe help you along, tell you things that can lead to stories and keep going.
Dan, how do you go about that, building those relationships and building that network?
Well, we're both baseball guys. We sort of came to it. I mean, I covered the Celtics for 4 years as the beat guy. You know, we've all done everything, but baseball is what got us going. And the old guys told me what to do when I was the young guy. And one of the great ones, and Kenny did this in Baltimore because he was one of the young guys. But, you know, the old guys would tell you, you're covering your team, you're covering the Orioles. Okay, go to the other side. Go talk to the Tigers manager when they're in town. See who's available for them. Talk to them about your team. You learn more about, well, you learn a lot about your team in the other room talking about your team. And no one does that anymore. I mean,
No.
if you look at, I mean, newspapers, whatever you want to, people who cover teams, they just cover their team. I don't know whether it's they're afraid they'll miss something or, you know, but if you spend a little time across the way in the other room, you can learn a lot about your team and other stuff. It's really valuable. I see that going away. Again, you're going to get a lot of old bastard talk up here today from, you know, about the way things used to be and all that stuff. So, you know, strap yourselves in. But that's one that's really fundamental in my view.
Dan, you mentioned that folks nowadays may only focus on covering their team. Ken, there's 30 major league teams, and you've got your pulse on all 30 of them. How do you do that?
Well, that's my job. So I don't cover one team. I have to cover all 30 of them. And I read a lot and talk to a lot of different people. And one thing I'll add to what Dan was saying, and it's a great point about talking to the other team, but the more people you talk to in general for any story, the better off you're going to be. And people always will say, you make that one extra phone call. Dan, I know that this has been the case for you too. There are times when you make that one extra phone call when that call is the gold. That's the one that gets you where you need to be. So for me, I have to read each day basically something about each team. And then I'm on the phone talking to different people, asking different questions, people from all different teams. And Dan's right. Sometimes the best information about a particular team comes from another team.
Dan, in your experience being a Boston guy, what enabled you to build those relationships to look at the Red Sox from the other room?
You know, it's just being around. I mean, because I didn't build a lot of great relationships because they either don't like me or they don't trust you. You know, I was never like aiming to become friends with the people I was covering. And I achieved that goal. You know, so, but that was to me a trade-off. I'm not going to protect you because you're my friend. So therefore, I was a little bit suspect. So the important thing was just to be around, and you get a level of trust and some credibility if they think you're treating their, like I covered the Celtics, and I mean some of the guys thought like Larry Bird's getting too much, he's getting his ass kissed every day, but I was hard on Bird when there weren't many things to criticize, but there were some, and the other guys liked that. So the fact that I wasn't, you know, cozying up to Bird, I think you went through that with Cal.
Yes.
You know, and so don't cozy up to the superstar because the other guys aren't going to respect you for that. So if you treat everybody the same, badly, whatever you want to call it, but I think there's some guys will notice that and respect that. But I early on decided I'm not going to have sources that I protect at the expense of not telling my readers what's going on. So I don't get a lot of scoops or people whispering in my ear from people that know I'm going to protect them if things don't go well. And that's a tricky one. Everyone does it differently there. I understand that. And sometimes it is a great asset to the TV station, to the paper, whatever, to have sources that you protect when things are bad. I just said, not interested in that. And we had some great scoop guys at Will McDonough at the Boston Globe. So Willie took care of that, and I didn't have to worry about it. But just being around is the key to a little bit of trust. If you're going through the long days that they're going through, and in those days we travel with them, so that made it easier. And you guys aren't going to have that opportunity, which is probably good. You can get your own miles. It'll be good. But it's being around for the long days. They do this. There's a little bit of respect that comes with that. You're going through the same crap they are.
Dan, you mentioned not being friends with these people, not protecting people, but you also don't want these relationships to be purely transactional. How do you find that balance in your career?
Well, I mean, if a guy, I never felt it was they're not obligated to talk to us. Manny Ramirez doesn't want to talk. That's fine. He hardly said anything anyway. It was fine. But that was fine. But usually would walk away. Well, that wasn't much. So it's not their job. If they choose not to, I respect that too. As long as they're not dicking around trying to waste your time or really, tease people, whatever. But yeah, just act professionally. So yeah, Kenny's the better guy on that because people like Kenny.
Some people.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that, Ken?
The one thing I'll say about protecting sources and the transactional element of it is that you blow through sources once in a while and people will stop talking to you, but there's always someone else that you can talk to. And Stan, what you said makes sense here because like when you covered Bird and the other Celtics were like, hey, wait a second. There's always somebody who has a different point of view who may be more willing to talk to you because you were honest enough to do your job properly. And in today's age, when there is so much emphasis on X, Twitter, and being first to a transaction, a lot of that is because people make deals that they shouldn't be making. If not, I'm not talking about deals like financially, but in their heads, relationship kind of deals and protecting people. And that's not the job. The job is to tell people what's going on. And in this day and age, too, last few years, obviously I did a lot on Twitter and have done a lot on Twitter, and I'm sure will still do a lot on Twitter. But I've emphasized it less because, one, you can't win. Win by 2 minutes. I don't think that's a win.
Yeah.
I don't think that's great reporting. And two, to get to that break, it requires you to make compromises that you shouldn't be making. And if it costs me, it costs me. There are other ways to do the job, better ways to do the job, more meaningful ways to do the job.
Yeah, we both know to that point, like if the guy's in Scott Boris's pocket, you can tell. He's going to get certain scoops, and that he'll be a little bit ahead of people on that. But you can also tell when he's protecting Boris.
Yeah.
It's like, so which is it? You can't do both, and that's a choice.
Want to open it up to the room for questions. Feel free to raise your hands. I'll call on you, and then I will repeat the question for those who are viewing on the live stream just to make sure that they know what is being asked. And if you want to direct your question in particular to either of our two panelists, please let me know there. We'll start with Chuck.
More interested in the transactions than they actually are taking. And then we have the Shans of the world, other people that are trying to fight for all of this. And what do you make of how this has evolved over time and how that affects overall reporting and the truth of the report?
First of all, I have no problem with people loving transactions. We all love transactions. They're fun. But you hit on something that is kind of what I was just talking about. I don't know that this evolution to what we are now with this kind of minute by minute stuff, breaking, I got it, you don't. I don't know that that's healthy in the overall scheme of things. It's certainly valuable in its own way. I'm not dismissing it in any sense at all. But could you be doing a more meaningful story that is not along those lines if you weren't making the choices you were making to get that story? And I'm not saying that all those stories break for nefarious reasons. I get some on my own, and hopefully it's not nefarious. But at the same time, I just don't believe that that is what it's all about. And I hate that young people grow up thinking, hey, man, I can be first on X. Yeah, great. But what else you got? And to me, there's been something lost in all this. And when Twitter first started and this kind of thing first started, there was value in it because people couldn't catch up as quickly. And now my goal is to write stories that no one can have in 2 minutes. It's a modest goal in some ways, but it's, to me, there's more valuable to the place that employs me than doing something on Twitter, which I may end up doing anyway, but to me, that's not what it's about.
Down in front on the left.
And I remember you were on the ground floor of the Athletic, and Dan, you were writing forever, as opposed to mentioned the value of the written word and substance to it. How do you balance that with the one click on your phone and making sure everyone gets the information they need to without maybe reading 1,000 words? How do you balance that?
Well, this all evolves. Every year it seems we take a different choice or have a different view of it. Our goal now is to write a story as quickly as we can. It used to be X, Twitter, but now if I can have a story ready, I don't know, 10 minutes after something happens, maybe because I've been working on it already, but might not have the break, that is more value to the Athletic, a lot more value than something on X. And I'll give you an example. Juan Soto, okay, when he signed, I knew for reasons that Dan kind of alluded to that I wasn't getting that story. I didn't care. But I had columns written on whether he signed with the Mets or Yankees. And both of them ready to go because it was something was going to happen. We knew that. That had more value to us in the end.
Continuing the question about the value of the written word versus just reactions on social. Dan, your thoughts on that?
Well, for me, it's all the former because, I mean, the only thing like Ken being prepared with written words, yeah, that's great. And that's the value of doing the legwork and being prepared and being familiar with the situation so it doesn't catch you off guard. So if you're doing the kind of work he's doing, I mean, 10 minutes is fine. And longer is fine. I mean, when Devers got traded to the Red Sox 2 weeks ago, Sunday, whatever that is now, Kenny had one of the first things that was sort of in depth. It was good, and he had been around Boston that weekend because the Yanks were in town, and that's what I look for. I don't give a crap who had it first, or it doesn't matter to me.
I don't know if the average fan cares.
Yeah, it's internal, the competition, but that to me is, I have no interest in that. But being able, I was home. It was Sunday night, and I have young fan readers who will text me and say, "Hey, Devers got traded." I'm like, "Where'd you hear that?" And it's just a reader. It's just a reader, and a son of a friend of mine, a young person. I'm like, and he says Passan. Now I know it's true because Jeff Passan had that, so it's going to be true. I'm like, he really did get traded. It's Sunday night. It's like 7:30. I think I'm in for the night watching stupid streaming shows. But now Devers just got traded. This is huge in Boston. But I'm around it so much, and I've been around it, so I can go downstairs in an hour and a half in my case. Really, not 10 minutes, sorry.
I'm not ever writing something in 10 minutes. And this guy's really fast.
But so I can have something lucid, hopefully, that'll hold up for a day and a half because it's going to be online by 9:30 Sunday night. It'll be in Monday's print, and people's late Monday still be picking up the old newspaper or whatever. And it's so you need to be aware it's going to be out there. The shelf life of that's longer than usual because it happened at 7:30 Sunday night, and away we go. So there is value. My old boss here, Joe Sullivan from the Boston Globe. So I'm fast, right, Joe?
Very fast.
See, and that's
I think the story, the column you wrote that that it was accumulated reporting that led to that column. That you always said it when people ask you how long did it take you to get that.
right. 71 years. That's how long it took. So when Theo resigned, and I'll try to narrow this down, but so Theo Epstein was general manager of the Red Sox and won the World Series. He was 28 years old. They won the World Series in 2004, and it was a big deal. So he was man of the year in Boston. I mean, he was like cover of everything. And then 2 years forward, his contract was up. There was distrust with his mentor, Larry Lucchino, who has since passed away. And he knows all about Larry. And there would always be distrust around Larry because that's just the way things work. And Theo thought Larry was trying to hurt Theo through me. So I referenced a trade, the Larry Bigby trade, which Theo, the Orioles were involved in a trade, and Theo found out about his minions had made the trade while he was working on something with Manny Ramirez. He didn't want the trade made. So, and I had 3 sources that indicated to me that Theo ordered the deal killed, but it was presented that Lucchino was overruling Theo. So it looked like Theo didn't know what he was doing. And when I wrote this, he resigned. That was the guerrilla suit
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff,
Legendary.
And it took me years to convince him, no, and it wasn't who he thought. But anyway, it was just he took him like 6 months to come back. He did come back, and of course, more fame, more fortune, on to the Cup. Won again there. He'll be in the Hall of Fame. But yeah, that was, as Joe says, it was accumulated. I knew all those guys. Kenny knows all those guys, and it helps to have been around. It's harder as I get older, but I was around a lot, and I was around those guys a lot, as you were. Anyway, thanks, Phil.
Ken, I want to go back to the Devers situation as a recent example. So, all through the year, we know, okay, he doesn't want to DH. Okay, he doesn't want to take ground balls at first. So that there's something going on, but then it's still a surprise to the outside world when that trade goes down. What's your process when that news breaks to, going back to our point on the value of the written word, get something that is of value to the Athletic in a reasonable time?
Well, I'm going to embarrass myself here, but when that trade happened, I was taking a nap. And we had a Saturday night broadcast. I had flown that morning, and I don't know, I was tired or whatever, and I had written something else already. So I felt I was good. I'm good for tomorrow. And then it broke, and like Dan said, I knew a lot of what was going on. We all did, and I was in Boston that weekend. So I had a lot of background built up. And my process then is just to write what I know. And that was an opinion column. I wasn't writing a news story. And I wrote my opinion, which I kind of had all along. But I was surprised as everyone else by the trade. And the mere fact that they did it kind of ticked me off. And that was the genesis of the column.
Good instinct.
Questions? Far left side, middle back.
First of all, I'm going to thank y'all for being here and just getting the opportunity to listen and learn from y'all. When I talk about building credibility in reporting, especially as someone younger than myself, how can we build our credibility in being a reporter like y'all with such high standing at a young age?
By doing it right. And by treating people respectfully and earning your respect little by little. And I'll give you an example from baseball because it's really all I know. But when I first started, I was working or competing with Tim Kirkton and Richard Justice, who then, and Tim still now, two of the best baseball people in the country. And I saw what they did, and they would talk to players not just about what they needed. They would just have conversations with people and show that they're not just in it to get their next story, but just to have a relationship with another human being. That's where it starts. And then the credibility forms from the work that you do. And if players perceive, or managers, or front office, whoever, perceive that you're going about it honestly, even if they disagree with what you're writing, all right, you're going to piss people off. And Dan knows this better than anyone. But at the same time, there's a grudging respect that forms. Not with everybody. Some people are just going to get pissed off and hate you, whatever. But to me, there's like a guiding light you have to follow. And that's the integrity, whatever you want to call it, in your work. And that's what does it. That and just building those relationships, and not just transactional relationships, real, like, hey, how you doing today? Simple as that.
Dan, how about you building credibility from a young
He
age?
said it all there. There's just be around, put in the time. And it's harder for you guys because access is way harder every year. And you're all endangered by this. So it's unfair to expect you guys to be able to do what we were able to do in terms of knowing people and being around, just being inside. They just legislated that out of it in a lot of places. And it's going to be very hard for you to develop the kinds of relationships that we could.
It's very
challenging.
Far back right, Nick.
Trade deadline, how chaotic is that with trying to figure out, you're trying to vet things and, okay, is this really happening? Is it not, especially when you're coming out at the top of the hour, things are closing down. How many sources are you saying, all right, this is really happening? 2, 3 guys tell me something. Is it like that? Or are you trying to, like you said earlier, you're trying to get it first? What's the balance there?
It is chaotic. And I'll tell you my most vivid memory from the deadline, because it's my worst memory. I don't remember the good ones, but this one, I thought I had something, and it was a couple of years ago when Scherzer got traded to the Dodgers, the Nationals to the Dodgers. I was told he was going to the Padres. I wish that was a good source. It's okay. Confirmed it with someone else who said, yep, That's what I think is going to happen. And between two of these guys, I thought, good. I reported it on Twitter. Of course, it didn't happen. And in fact, reporting it might have swung it the other way and maybe woke up the Dodgers more. I don't know. But it turned out, and I spent a long time, like years, trying to figure out what the hell happened. I figured it out, and it turned out I got played by the first guy, and the second guy didn't. So stuff happens, and you never want it to happen, and that kills me to this day that it happened at all. But to answer your question, it is chaotic. It's crazy, and at the end of that day, I'm just like, and I got to write at the end of that day. There's a lot to write because a lot has happened, but I'm just fried. And usually I take a vacation shortly after.
Back on the right side, Dominic.
My question is, you guys remember the first report that you ever did, you ever look back on it and say, geez, why did I put this line in there, or where did I get this from, and just think of how lucky or how far you come to get this one.
Ooh. I mean, the first, I think like all of you guys, the first things were, small time relative to what we get. He's on national TV and all this stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it starts, I think, for all of us. My first story I was at college at Holy Cross, and they put me on the freshman football team, and I'm pretty sure I wrote that they're in a rebuilding year. Which is pretty stupid when you think about it. So, I mean, are they not always in a rebuilding year, the freshman football team? So, yeah, I mean, the stuff that you do early on, and I did all the high schools, and, that's where, you got to keep your own stats. High school football, Jesus, keeping your own stats. It's probably better now, but running up and down the rainy sidelines and gross weather, and, I mean, this is how you learn. But, yeah, so I look back at the stuff I did was very small. But in that time, it's got to be the most important thing to you because it matters to those kids that you're writing about, and they get their names in the paper. And it's not the big. I understand that because everybody's names in social media, but it's still value that. And just a little when you're covering the high schools, which a lot of you probably are, or maybe not SEC college but smaller college. Be nice to those people. You don't need to put the kid's name in to make sure to lose the game. We don't cover them the way we cover the guys who hate us. It's different.
Ken, how about you?
So my first story that I remember was my tryout story for the York Daily Record in York, Pennsylvania. That was my first job. And it was a wrestling tournament. And I knew nothing about wrestling. And I'm talking to high school kids who really didn't have much to say. And the only quote I had in the story was, they had bad years. This kid was talking about his school, which hadn't done well. And I said, he said, bad years. And I remember the woman I was dating at the time, she was just making fun of this. She was like, that's the quote you got? He said bad years? But yeah, that's all I had. And then to speak to what Dan was talking about, covering some of the high school stuff, or in my case, American Legion baseball. In my first job in York, I did a story on some game that took place. It was an American Legion game. I must have gotten 10 names wrong. And the sports editor's screaming at me and saying, you have one job when you cover these games, is just to get the names right. That's all you have to do. Anything else doesn't matter. It was a pretty valuable lesson. Learned the hard way.
Yeah, one thing on high school kids and college kids to a degree, and a lot of you are young and of that age, but I've learned over the years, when you're talking to them, get them one-on-one. Do not talk to players in front of their friends. No one's going to say anything when the others are there.
Yeah.
They just don't do it. If you get them off to the side, you might get something there. But if their friends are around, it changes the whole dynamic. Don't do it.
Front middle here.
Hi, my name is Alex. I'm wondering, is there still a lot of value in informational reporting when it seems like a lot of parody and opinion pieces kind of get more clicks and more attention?
I don't agree with that. I think the information still gets the most attention. You'll see people with loud opinions, they'll get a lot of attention too. But as Dave said before, those people are basing their opinions on what's being reported. So to me, the reporting is still the most important thing. And I'll tell you a story about that. Recently, I won't even name the city. I don't want to give people, but a columnist for a paper became the beat writer. Something of a demotion in some respects. And I asked a couple of the beat writers of that team, I said, hey, what does that person think of this? She was upset. Was he upset? And the answer was, yeah, that person's upset, but they shouldn't be because we're the ones who are getting all the play now, beat people. And that's true. The Athletic, we value most beat writers, not opinion writers, beat writers. And that's not to say there isn't a place for good opinion, informed opinion like you get from this guy. And then you got, like he said, the talk show nitwits and some other nitwits running around who just talk out of their whatever.
On the aisle right here in the middle.
Yeah, John Mallory, Boise, Idaho. We cover and we tell the stories of some of the most fascinating people. Some of the people that no one else on the planet can do what they do. And it's fascinating. And sometimes they're funny and they're nice. They want to have a beer with you. Like, Dan, for you to start, like, what was your line of becoming friends with them?
It was easy. Again, they didn't want to hang around with me, so that kind of made it easy. I mean, so, and then that's gotten more so as I've gotten older now. It's like, but when I was young, the money wasn't as different with the players and the writers. You know, we were the same age, and so you might get that kind of thing. But I would never make plans with anybody, and it just never came up. But I bump into guys. So especially when we travel with them, you know, waiting for bags together. We were waiting for our luggage together. Well, that's, you know, you have conversations at luggage and on the bus. But again, that's gone for you guys. So you don't really travel with them. Maybe you do it, you know, if you cover your college or you know, smaller sports, there is still that access. But that's it just wasn't hard for me to separate because nobody trusted me, and because they knew if I found out something that was affecting the play, that'd end up in there. So it was an easy. It wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, I was the same. I never hung out with players. It's a different world. Even when I was starting out, they were at a different place financially in every way. And it was not even a thought to hang out with them. It was separate. And I remember back then, when this was still allowed, I would travel on the plane with the Orioles my first couple of years. I worked for an evening paper, so I could do that. And I would sit in a window seat near the front and just trying to hide. And even now, the Fox job that I have is sort of off the topic, but I'll get to it. I'm in the dugout for playoff games. Sometimes I'll go in the dugout to interview a player. I always feel uncomfortable. It's not my place. And there's a very definite line that I think you'll know instinctively where you cross it and where you don't cross it. And I guess it comes with time, experience, but it seems to me you have to make a choice at some point in your career, right? Are you going to be that kind of guy, the collegial, hey, I'm friends with everybody, or are you going to be someone who's actually a reporter? That's where it comes down to.
Back center.
Eric Pauling with Rosenthal, Wyoming, and I wanted to touch on something you actually opened with. You referred to it as old bastard talk.
That was me.
In a 30,000-foot view of the future of reporting, I work in broadcast, and so we're asked to exist on multiple platforms now, be involved on Twitter. To me, Twitter is a necessity of, you know, opinions and angry people. But you talk about the importance of having reporters such as yourself that are the backbone of those conversations, the shock jocks of Twitter and broadcast. We talk radio. Do you have any concern for the future of sports journalism in terms of the pipeline of the next generation to replace you guys, to look for you guys? You know, journalism jobs are becoming more and more difficult to find. They pay less, and the option of being a person, things like that, is out there, which muddies the water.
Well, I'll go first on this, and it's a little bit of repeating myself, but I think that, hey, it doesn't do any good to bay at the moon about how great things used to be, and like I said, the old bastard talk. But that said, everything evolves, and we're always going to need good young reporters good young storytellers, and you guys are them. So don't worry about the old bastard stuff because we still need this to be regenerated. And it doesn't do good to have older people who saying, dwelling on how great it was. My fallback there is, and he's still young to me, but
Not really.
we got to do it when it was the most fun. It really was more fun, and I feel badly that it's not as much fun for you guys because so much of it's been stripped down from that, and it's so much harder in many ways for you to get the access and to do the job. And this whole thing about, and you referenced, did you say Barstool? Oh, that dreaded word, and again, they're not our friend. And it bothers me that the teams are partnering corporate. It's just, that's fans writing for fans. Knock yourselves out. No, thank you. And again, I can't bay at the moon and wish it were still, but I'm not interested in, that's what talk radio's for, fans for fans. It's great, but that's not what we do. So if you're on that thing, go work for Barstool and go be part of that, but that's not what we do. And again, there's a place for them and they're making a lot more money than we are. So I get that. They're putting us out of business. I get that. But I'm not going to be part of it or applaud it or think that that's what the job should be. It's different if you're working for MLB Network or MLB.com. You're a little bit compromised because your boss is that. My boss is John Henry. The man who owns the Globe owns the Red Sox.
It's amazing.
So I've got one that no one else has in the history of journalism. So that's a barrel of laughs, right? So.
Hey, you ask if there are concerns. Yeah, big concerns. And my main concern is just the number of outlets that are available now. It's shrinking all the time. And that is my biggest question and biggest worry because there are fewer places to do the kind of work Dan's done his whole career. And I don't know where that goes. Dan's right. Everything evolves, and we both had to adapt ourselves, like everyone else in the business, over time. But when there are fewer and fewer places willing to ask the tougher questions, willing to be independent, that makes it difficult. And it actually puts an even bigger target on those who are doing that. So, yeah, I'm concerned. I don't know where it's going. And sometimes I think being the old bastard's a little bit better than being the young guy now because it's tough. It's a tough situation.
Dominic?
You talked earlier about how speaking with professionals and writing about professionals is different in college and high school. Now that the college high school are also getting paid, you can able themselves up to the same person the professionals do.
I'm not changing on that. I mean, I understand big time college sports and if I don't know if the girls volleyball players are getting paid, good for them. But I'm still not going to cover them like I do covering Rafael Devers. To me, that's not professional sports. And I understand, and the college thing, the ship has sailed on that one, so we all understand that. Nobody's fault. But I still, that's still somebody's child out there to me, unless it's big time, Cotton Bowl kind of stuff or SEC, like I said. But absent that, I'm just not interested in exposing them to the same kind of harsh coverage that we do for the pros.
I think it's a valid question, but I'm with Dan. And there is a difference between Rafael Devers and the guy who's playing for Vanderbilt in the College World Series. That's a different world.
Second row.
I'm Maggie Davis from Kentucky. Ken, I have a question for you about your TV work specifically. In terms of telling viewers something they don't know and the value of the written word that we talked so much about, how do you find yourself condensing some of your reporting when you only have so much time in a broadcast? You make yourself the most valuable as a member of a broadcast when you have less time as the guy in the dugout and the broadcasters who have 2-3 hours taken.
That's a great question. And sometimes I don't do that very well. But that job is very specific in the sense that I will have, for an in-game report, maybe 30 seconds at most. And half the time, when I'm in the middle of my great report, the ball goes flying somewhere and I got to defer to the play-by-play guy. And maybe they come back to me and maybe they don't. But it's something I've had to learn over the years. And it's something that you just have to be really crisp with what you're saying. And it's hard. It's a lot different than writing, but the same skills apply. You have to self-edit, and you have to just be aware of your role. I'm not a play-by-play person or color person. I have very limited things that I'm going to be able to say. But in that 30 seconds, I'm trying my best to at least give something different.
Right here.
I'm interested to hear about y'all have worked some of the biggest games, biggest sporting events, in recent sports history, World Series, NBA Finals. I'm interested what your approach is for some of the bigger sports moments. How do you stay professional yet give it the attention and excitement that it deserves?
Dan?
Well, it's the professional part to me. I decided that when I got out of college and covered the Red Sox when I was 21, 22, and you're a professional, so it's just not the same. You're not covering the team with the people you're covering don't sit next to history class like they did at Holy Cross, or, the athletes actually did that when I was in college. So yeah, the professional part was easy, but then these stories would just become, you guys were too young, most of you, but that Red Sox Yankee thing, when the Red Sox finally beat them in 2004, I mean, it's the greatest story ever told in sports, in my view, because of where I grew up in 86 years, and the Yanks win 27 World Series, the Red Sox don't win any, and then they come back 3-0 after losing 19-8, the only 3-0 comeback in the history of 7-game playoffs, which go back 150 years. And it's all, and A-Rod was on both teams over the winter. It was just, there was 1,000 things for that. Star power, TV, casual, you could be the most casual fan, you could not escape that thing. Never a story like it was biblical. We all read books about it. There were like 100 books on that thing. So I just, but professionally, it's still, for me, a deadline and night games and got to do it quick. So that part was easy. I'm always rooting for myself in that case. I want the narrative that supports what I've been saying. So I hope for that. And then if you don't get it, then you give credit and you suck it up and do that. But it was just gripping how consuming that was. And that was a story that built, as I said, over decades. So a story like that, and I was there when the Patriots had never won. Brady comes back in New Orleans. They had been a laughing stock. Then they became a dynasty. So seeing that, those kinds of things, and the Bird Magic years of Lakers and Celtics, just these things, just those are great. Yeah, so thanks for asking. It's nice to be back. You?
Well, because I'm a national writer, I'm not affiliated with any one team or city. So it doesn't really apply to me. But even when I was in Baltimore covering the Orioles, my job was to cover the game and cover the team and not be the cheerleader for the team. And one reason why Dan's job is so difficult is because when you are the columnist in a city, in the leading columnist in the city, fans don't really want to hear negative. A lot of them don't. Now, in the Devers trade, that was an example where they only wanted to hear the negative. But most of the time, that's not true. And a lot of times, that person is going to be subject to a lot of criticism and negative commentary. But this guy stayed true to himself. That's why he's going to the Hall of Fame tonight. And why he's in the Baseball Hall of Fame as the BBWA Career Excellence winner. And you know what? All the people who bitch, they know what's real and what's not. And they don't have to agree with every comment. I would hope no one agrees with everything I write. That would be crazy. But it's just staying true to who you are.
And one follow on that, just so the year before the Red Sox won, they lost epically. The Aaron Boone home run. They had a 5-2 lead in Game 7 in Yankee Stadium, and they were going to win the American League pennant on Yankee soil. And Pedro was left in the game incorrectly by Grady Little, who was fired over this one decision. And the Yanks scored 4 times with a 5-2 lead. And I can't be thinking about, oh, my Red Sox lost. I'm crying. That's why you don't bet on the games, because then you have that vested interest, and I don't even emotionally bet. But that happens. Boone hits the home run. I got to be able to flip this whole narrative. And that is the 10-minute thing. That's with a story that's going to be in print the next day. It was still print back then. And that matters. And we had some epic screw-ups Boston teams that were prepared to win. I don't even, with the Bill Buckner game, you go back and, they're all on the reels. But, and you can't be emotionally attached to the event to a point where you can't do your job, because the story is the story. And whether it's good or bad, it's going to be memorable, and you don't want to embarrass yourself because you can't work because you're emotionally attached to the outcome.
Last one down here in front.
So I go to the University of Alabama. I'm looking to, I would love a career as a beat writer. I write for Sports Illustrated affiliate right now, and I love everything about it. Looking at the way that everything is shifting, how concerned do you guys think that I should be entering the workforce in the next year with that? And I've seen so many people laid off. Good writers, in my time, just thinking it. How concerned should I be people in this room to get a full career out?
I'll give you two answers, and they're kind of opposite. So I get asked by young people all the time that very question. It's a great question. It's the question you should be asking, because the business is brutal. Even when we were starting, it was brutal, and it was not nearly as bad as it is now. And I think you have to have your eyes open to that. You have to be maybe versatile in your mind on what you might want to do. Both in media, maybe even beyond media, whether it's radio, television, newspaper, online, you have to be able to shift if that's necessary. You have to probably be able to live in a place you don't want to live, if necessary. It's not always necessary. And you have to be aware of all that. The other side of it to me, and this is why it's so difficult when I get asked questions like this, I don't ever want to discourage people from pursuing their dream. You just said you love it. When I was starting out, people would say the same kinds of things. My dad said, "How are you going to do this? It doesn't make sense." There were other people who told me you weren't good enough and you shouldn't do this. You should go to law school, do something else. And that to me is the most offensive thing someone can say to another. I would say to a young person, don't follow your dream. So what I would say is, in summary, follow your dream, but just be aware that there's a rough landscape out there. And if it doesn't go well, it doesn't go well. But don't give up. Don't give up right away. No way.
Dan, your thoughts?
Yeah, you're about to wade into that stage, which we did, and it's an attrition stage. Not everybody's going to stay with it. 5 years from now, you might be selling stocks, making fistfuls of money. Who knows? Or it might be an SID someplace. Thinking about low pay and long hours, and that's the vetting process. Not everybody's going to stay with it, and if you love it enough, you will stay with it. There's going to be room. There are going to be jobs. The vetting process, it's rough. It's not fragile, and you won't hear back from people. You'll have interviews, and they won't even let you know you didn't get it. Don't take it personally. It's the process. It's the numbers. And basically, the ones who really want it end up staying there, and it still might be unsatisfying, but that it'll test your love. That's what's coming up.
Final words, Ken. We'll start with you.
Well, I think that was a great question to end on, because I think everyone in this room probably is wondering about what's next and where's the business going. And again, it's difficult to say, hey, man, go for it. This is great. Don't worry. Because it's not always so great. And I worked for The Athletic, and a couple of years ago, we went through layoffs where people who were really good, lost their jobs. And it pains me to this day that happened. But some of them landed on their feet, some of them did just fine. And sometimes one door does close and it does lead to another opening, and sometimes not. But again, if your passion is this, follow your passion and see where it takes you. And it might not take you, it probably won't take you exactly where you thought. It hasn't happened to me that way. I thought all I wanted to do was be a beat writer, like you. And I did some other things. Turned out great. But don't be discouraged, and don't be so frigid or rigid in your mind where I can only do this. That's a problem. If you can stay flexible and just kind of stay open-minded to things, that'll help.
No words from Dan.
Well, I just said this, we both just answered that.
Yeah.
In my view. Yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, there's also the insurance component. I think you're good on your parents' insurance till you're 26. So yeah, if you get to that point, maybe you start thinking about doing something else.
It's a good line. It's a good deadline.
Go with that.
Good stuff. Ken, Dan, congratulations on your honors tonight. Thank you so much for taking the time to discuss.